Hi guys, this is Catherine from the Newfoundland Cannabis podcast. I just wanted to let you know that today's episode is going to go into topics such as suicide, death, emotional content, and some information that may just plain make you uncomfortable. I'll leave with the information that 10 Canadians a day die of suicide. If you or a family member are currently considering suicide or in crisis, please, in Newfoundland, call the number 1-888-737-4668, or across Canada, you can contact 1-833-456-4566. No matter where you are right now in your life, you are listening to this podcast and you're still here, and we're glad that you're still here. So thanks for still being with us.
Hi, welcome to the Newfoundland Cannabis podcast, episode 5. So off the intro there, you heard that we are going to be dealing with some serious content. So this episode is our much delayed mental health
Very
episode.
delayed.
The irony in sitting down and talking about mental health is that sometimes your mental health doesn't really want you to do that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't want you to do a lot of things in general. Just to remind you guys, I'm of course Catherine,
And I'm Brad.
and we are your regular hosts.
You know what? We're not gonna blurt our Instagrams and everything at you right now. We're gonna we'll just plug all that later.
Yeah, this is gonna stay pretty somber, most of it, but to keep you guys in a happy place, there is a very positive at the very end of this episode.
We've already done a little bit of
on.
teasing about it.
Yeah, so everyone kind of knows what it's about, but we'll give a little bit more
we're
information.
gonna give a little more spotlight to it in its own little section once we end out. We'd like to end on a happy note.
Yeah, that would be really nice for today. I mean, no one wants to end their Saturday feeling gloomy.
Yeah, and I mean by the time this comes up, it'll probably be literally the end of your Saturday.
Yeah, no one wants that.
As we mentioned, mental health, and obviously we are the Cannabis podcast, so
it's going to be mental health and how cannabis can aid or affect or, kind of make differences based on our own experiences mostly.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, we're not doctors. We've seen doctors. Doctors have told us that cannabis is a good idea.
Yes. So we've been prescribed it personally ourselves. That doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody, unfortunately, like any other medication that you take.
And in our situation, we're lucky enough that we have the ability and space really to grow our own, so we're not reliant on kind of the LP system, which, if you followed any of our social media or anything we've been saying, there's a lot of strange health stuff and just unknowns.
You want to trust what's helping you. You want it to help you.
Exactly. So, if you can, and medical cannabis is something that's reasonable for you, we definitely suggest growing where you can. Once again, if you live in, really doesn't matter if you live in Newfoundland, if you live anywhere, Green Valley Wellness, or just personally who we've used, they've helped us renew our license and everything like that. And conveniently, actually, Green Valley Wellness, I know they work very closely with Jamie. Oh my god, I forget
I'm
Jamie's
not good with last
full
names
name
either.
But Jamie represents PTSD Buddies and Green Valley Wellness, so they work very closely together, obviously, to discuss and help people through PTSD, discuss other methods of coping and treatment.
And they do have a group kind of session where people can get together and talk.
They have a YouTube actually where they actually have some recorded sessions and member submissions. If you find our YouTube, we actually have them featured on our channel.
Yep.
And so with that, I think what we're gonna do, and I guess for the structure of this, just going through the notes, I think kind of talk about, and if you disagree, we can kind of change it on the fly.
We could
We're still
fight
not,
about it.
yeah, we're still not like super serious and super scripted here.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to talk about kind of like, I guess, what our individual kind of like treated illnesses are,
Mm-hmm.
when we may have first noticed them, kind of how that impacted us maybe growing up. And then, from there we could talk about cannabis and where that kind of comes into it, how that affects us presently. I think in this case, like, you opened it up, of course, with the content warning. I'm not to say like one mental illness is, more serious or less serious than another, but I know it's a struggle that you've noticed a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I think like I'd rather open up with you.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable with that.
That's fine. The content warning does kind of go more into my stories and my situation, unfortunately. I'm not ashamed to speak about my illness and my struggles. The illness that I actually suffer from is called borderline personality disorder. That's categorized basically as being a mood disorder where you're on the border of being manic and neurotic. So basically what happens is people with borderline personality disorder at a young teenage age, of course, they start to experience depression, anxiety, a lot of regular kind of like depression symptoms, but they start to evolve into substance abuse, risky behavior, inability to maintain your mood, your attention. You develop a poor self-body image. It's just kind of this illness that's really hard to explain when it's something that's so new for them to categorize, and most people won't get diagnosed with it before the age of 18. So it's more of something new that they're looking into and trying to understand. But it can be more on the harsh side of the depressive disorders.
And so like if I understand from, because of course like it's new to both of us, really.
Well,
like
yeah.
It's not something you knew until
Yeah.
until we've been together. So like if I understand really, and I'm gonna do like the very baseline, no medical knowledge needed. I mean, it kind of puts you on the verge of like, if there's a kind of mood disorder, be it bipolar or just being manic in general or depressed, it kind of puts you on the verge of all of those at given times.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting on the border of a bunch of different personality disorders. So like, manic depressive, bipolar. A lot of people with BPD also experience OCD. Myself, it manifests itself as skin picking. So like it does actually come with a plethora of mental illnesses just attached to it itself. So it kind of just opens you up more because you're so acceptable to feeling emotions, to overreacting in a way to everything around you. I guess it kind of makes you, more fearful, more reactant to things.
So it's almost like, I guess you're over, and not to say it rudely, but you're oversensitive to certain
I'm
things.
I'm overstimulated easily. So a very
you feel too much.
Yeah, I feel way too much, and also I am a glutton for sadness. Like part of it is that the emotion I feel the most is sadness. So I want to feel something still. So sometimes I'll subject myself to really sad movies or video games or stories just so I can feel that base feeling. Because it is so pronounced. It can be a good or a bad thing. Sadness can. So I like being able to like manifest it that way. But unfortunately, when it comes to real life situations, I have no control over myself.
And so I know like one of these situations, like the happy or sad, anytime we look at pictures of our pets or anything like that, that's like one of those, I am at the point now where I could smile about it and just remember kind of fondly.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for you, like, you feel that tenfold. And
Yeah.
so, like, you have amplified, like, really happy memories, but then, of course, like, that overwhelming sadness.
Yeah, and I also have a very photographic memory, a really good memory. So,
Which, in some cases, that's
yeah, it's a
great.
good thing when you want to remember the really good things, but recently we lost a cat who was a very good boy named Castiel.
He was our smoke buddy.
Yes, he was a very good boy,
He
and
liked his catnip.
oh, he loved his catnip. He was a fucking cat stoner.
Uh,
But
we
so,
he I just want to say he is responsible for the death of like our very first grow.
yes, he ate two plants.
Ah, Cass.
Good boy. But dealing with his passing, he is actually buried within eyesight of us very often. So I have to kind of go through the feelings over and over again. It does slowly dull, but it's not like a normal person's. I hate to say that normal person, a neurotypical person's response. Um, I kind of just feel as if I had just lost him in just 2 seconds flat, just looking at his grave. And, you know, for a neurotypical person, that's not the response you feel. Yes, you feel a little sad, but you shouldn't feel the same level. It should dissipate way more than that.
And so, like, going to like, when did you first? As I said, like you only really got the official diagnosis of BPD recently, but like, when did you notice things like for you where you kind of clued in and thought like, hey, something's going on here. I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
this or that.
Unfortunately, my first sign I didn't know was my first sign. I was living in Ontario and, you know, big population. I was on a bus one day and hyperventilated, and I would have only been around the age of 10 around then, but just hyperventilated about the fact of being surrounded by so many people and overwhelmed. So my mom took me to the hospital and they told me that that was just a panic attack, and I didn't know what that meant at the age of 10. So that just never meant anything to me. But fast forward to 3 to 4 years later, I had my first ever suicide attempt. Um, I
And so
struggled.
just, oh, sorry.
Oh,
So
so
I
no,
just
no,
want
no,
to
go
say,
right
so
ahead.
for time purposes, so you said 3 or 4 years later, so we're saying like age 13 or
13 or
14.
14. Yeah, I had my first ever suicide attempt. So within that time frame, we had actually moved back to Newfoundland. I was living in Gander at the time, and I was being severely bullied.
Since I have slightly visited Gander, I never played with the Gander kids, right?
Yeah,
It was always just on the very confined military section of Gander, which almost all of Gander.
all of
But
Gander is basically military, but no, the school kids there were incredible, to say the least, when it comes to their insults and the way that they could just break you down as a person. And of course, you know, some normal people, neurotypical people, I have to change my wording with that and stop putting myself down. Um, some neurotypical people, you know, could have taken the words that they had said. Because some of these things just, you know, now as I get a little bit older and I start to understand my illness, I understand that they weren't that important of things to be upset about. But I was to this point where I just didn't want to exist anymore. I had a poor family life, I had a poor friend life, I was bullied, I was doing bad in school at the time. Um, the first time I attempted suicide, I had tried to cut myself.
okay, and
And
I
yeah,
remember you telling me that story, of course.
yes. And my brother had actually found out. And I come from a family, unfortunately, that doesn't believe in mental illnesses as much, or doesn't believe that they could have a mental illness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this belief of immunity, or just not understanding it. It's not really like passing the blame to someone. It's more just our culture in Newfoundland as well is very against mental health, very much so against
Yeah,
mental
I
health.
was I was gonna say like not to like super vilify your family. It's like
Yes, no, it's
it's
not their fault.
it's something that's really ingrained. Like Newfoundland is a very small population of about what 500,000 people now, maybe less. So it's a small population. Mental illness is something that's very very prevalent here because of that. Um, there's no way to really say it, but like small isolated island over generations, I'm sure there was family genes mixed, and that might lead to the some of the mental illness in the province. But the attitude here is very much like, no, no, it doesn't exist. We don't have a problem with that, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, as we know, a mental illness gone unchecked can become much much worse.
Yes, it can develop into something else completely if unchecked. So, we need the resources here for that treatment, and for, the influx of people who do have mental illnesses.
Well, yeah, I mean the system here is very very strained. I think we've mentioned before, like there's wait lists of months or years.
Years. I was 3 years waiting for a psychiatrist here in St. John's. Um, just to go back to that first situation there, that
Sorry, sidetracked.
situation, um, the response of my family was my brother found out that I had tried to kill myself. And he treated it as in, I'm gonna tell on you. So, of course, he went and told my parents that this had happened. And my mother's first response was, the next time you do that, I'm going to call the police on you. Because she had no idea what else to say. And how else do you scare a kid other than, hey, the police will come and get you? Which, might work in your mind, but when that person is thinking, they want to die anyways, where is the threat in that?
Yeah, and I mean the police is always like an, oh, I'm in trouble, so it's
Yeah.
like
So it
making it
felt like
think
I
like you're
did
doing
something
something wrong.
wrong. Yeah. And it again, it wasn't my mother's fault. She had no idea what to do. She had no idea how to respond to that. And no one really did back then know how to
Even
respond to that.
even now,
Even
if you're
now.
right, there wouldn't be these, and I'm not gonna promote one the biggest one in particular, but we wouldn't need these like end the stigma, break the stigma things if
Hmm.
everyone understood mental illness and were very empathetic to that. I think it's something that over time I've become much more empathetic towards, even myself, as someone who does struggle, and like I've seen my mental health kind of decline too, due to various situations over the years.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
getting back to your situation, I think you were saying like your brother was mentioning to your parents.
Yeah, it had told them about it. And so that really didn't stop the mentality of, like I wanted to die. I didn't, to this day, I will admit, to this day, I still have this feeling, but I don't act on it the same as I did when I was younger. It was more urgent and more of like an urge or an impulse when I was younger, but now I have more of a thought process to it. It's a little bit more dark because you think about it more. But like you think it over and you think, no, I shouldn't do that. No, I shouldn't do that because this will happen. This will happen. This will happen. So at least there's some thought process to it that says, hey, like, this is an end all thing. Like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Like, this is like Windows 7 level. Like, my brain has at least evolved to Windows 7. where are you sure you want to do this?
Okay. Or
Enable
like
admin. Like, you need to be sure you want to do this.
or like back in the day when you went to quit Wolfenstein, it's like, are you sure? Like, do you really want to just let the Nazis win type
Yes,
of thing?
exactly. Like that's what it's like.
And obviously, you can't say yes to that. The answer is always no if it's asking Nazis. Like, do you want the no, you do not want the Nazis to win.
Yeah, and then of course going through having these emotions of suicidal thoughts. I also went through just regular old self-harm. I'm not saying it as in like it's just regular old self-harm as in you should do it. I'm just saying that without the intent to kill myself, like just self-mutilation. And that sounds absolutely terrifying to any neurotypical person, but that is a good stepping stone for someone who is suicidal.
And like from our generation, which is like not a great thing to say, but
Yeah.
like self harm was almost a trendy thing. But like there were some people who like
Yeah, I know.
through their own mental illness like
Yes,
made that
exactly.
like I need help. But like it's a weird time we came from where everyone was really depressed and like that was weirdly glorified.
Yeah. No, self harm was glorified when I was younger because I do remember like people just drawing on marks on their arms and stuff because it looked like people from like the emo videos and stuff.
Right.
Like it was the emo chic. That that's a whole other
Like keep
story.
in mind, guys, maybe embarrassingly we met on like a
On-
silly goth kid website. I don't even want to name it. I don't want
yeah,
to
let's
promote
not
them.
even. Let's
But
not.
it was a vampire goth themed website from like what we were 13 14, I was 14 15 maybe.
Yeah, I would have been about 13 when I started on there.
Yeah, way too young to be on that type of site, but nevertheless.
Right? We were so goth.
Yeah. Unfortunately, those pictures still exist somewhere.
It comes down to mostly two things: skin picking, so just regular, what I would call just regular skin picking, or neurotic scratching. If I go into psychosis, which is an unfortunate byproduct of BPD, not everyone with BPD will experience psychosis, but I myself go in and out of psychotic breaks multiple times a month, sometimes once a month. It is very unfortunate. You recess, you become not yourself. It's like sitting in the back of an empty movie theater and you're watching everything happen in front of you. In those situations of self harm, I would, again, content warning, tear the skin off of my arms using my own nails. So literally peel skin off of my arms. And that is a form of self-harm rather than, suicidal intent. There's no way just peeling your skin off your arms is going to kill you. But it was literally just the intent, this feeling that my body was looking to release something
And
from my skin.
I mean, I guess like the biological thing is you're just releasing like endorphins and that's flooding
Yeah,
your brain.
exactly. Like it is releasing endorphins and stuff into my brain, and you become addicted to it. So my skin picking part, that's a daily phenomenon for me. It can take an hour to 2 hours. If you've ever watched My Strange Addictions, there is an episode about skin picking.
Okay. I've never
Yeah,
watched it.
she ends up getting a very severe staph infection, which is something I've had myself because of skin picking. That's actually when I found out that skin picking is a problem and it wasn't normal, was when a doctor
Not-
told me, hey, stop doing that.
Not just like a nervous habit.
Yeah, it's not just a nervous habit. It's not just like skin preening or like, it's not just someone who picks at acne. There could be nothing wrong with my skin. It could just be like a dry patch and I will dig my skin out. And I have no idea why I do it and why I crave doing it, but after it started, it just couldn't stop.
Right. And that's something like even if I notice you doing, like I have to kind of nudge you and just remind you, like,
Yeah.
because you're subconsciously just kind of doing that.
Yeah, there are times where we can just be sitting there and all of a sudden I'll look down and I'll be like, "Oh, my arm's bleeding." And we have no idea why. Well, we know why, but we don't know when it kind of
But it's like,
happened.
yeah, at what point?
Yeah. So that's a scary part of the BPD as well, that self harm and the suicidal thought. But the worst part of it for myself had to be the substance abuse. So when I went to college, I had not drank
Up
until,
to that
yeah,
point,
up
yeah.
until my 18th birthday, and I just lost complete and total control from there on out. Up until 6 years ago, I drank every day, walks back and forth to the liquor store, lying about drinking. Just, I was constantly like under the influence because I didn't want to feel the emotions I was feeling. And I became a tragic, horrible person. I possibly ruined lives. I ruined my own life. I was a rude person. And outside of my own actual personality, like my own personality wants
Well,
nothing but the best for
yeah, that's
anyone.
not who you are. That's
Yeah.
not like what you present or what.
Yeah, there's no part of me that ever wants anyone to suffer. Like I don't want anyone to ever feel anywhere as bad as I feel on a daily basis. So I would never in my own conscience try to hurt someone. But there is that side of me that just gets dissociated and either angry. If it becomes anger, I have no control. Just when I become angry, I become a whole other person. I either internalize it, in which case where I beat myself up and tell myself that I'm awful, I'm the problem. I recess, I don't talk to people, or very rarely it turns into an outward burst where I become aggressive towards the person verbally. Never physically. No, never
Well, that's always
physically.
good.
Just verbally. That's still not a good thing. No, you should
Are,
never verbally assault someone.
are we sure that's not just the Italian part of you?
Shh. Secrets,
Ah.
secrets. A. Um,
And so I mean, yeah, like it's been something, for you, you've obviously dealt with now for over a decade. Most of that not knowing really,
well, 15 years.
and so
16
like,
years? 16 years.
yeah, and so I mean, like over that time, like had you been trying any other like medications? I know I obviously know
Yeah, you
this,
know the answer to this.
but other people
I
don't.
have been on a list of medications. I have been on antidepressants, anti anxiety. I had a very severe addiction to benzos, to Ativan, where I was taking like 11 to 15 of them at a
And this is
time just to
not,
make myself not feel anymore.
and it's not like an unusual thing. Like
Yeah, a lot of
every
people have problems with
we've
benzos.
heard lots of stories. We know people that have, you know, at the suggestion of their doctor, innocently enough, like, hey, try this. And certainly, like, I've taken Ativan once or twice. It wasn't really for me. Like, did it stop my anxiety in that moment? Yes. But I didn't really feel great.
Yeah, exactly. Like as you start coming down from Ativan, you start to feel awful. Like you start to feel more anxiety than you felt before you took it. So then you feel like you need to take more to combat
Yeah.
that.
I'm
And for
not.
me, that just ended up being like a month's prescription gone in 2 days.
Yeah, and like, I'm not gonna endorse it, but ecstasy was a better anti-anxiety medication for me than Ativan. That's
But
not healthy, but hey.
but outside of Ativan, for me, I had tried basically SSRIs. I have been
Hey.
on 3 different types of antipsychotics. One of them was pretty good, but super expensive,
Even with like discounts
even
from
with
big
discounts from
pharma.
the manufacturer. And the only, unfortunately, what it comes down to is the government of Canada doesn't recognize anything outside of schizophrenia as being a psychotic disorder for some weird reason. So if you have to take an antipsychotic outside of having schizophrenia, you have to have a doctor's note stating that they have tried absolutely everything else for you, which you could be years waiting for certain therapies. You could be going through
Especially.
a lot of terrible side effects with a lot of different medications just to have someone sign a letter saying, hey, you should probably pay for this medication for this sick person.
Which is insane.
Yeah, no, it's really not fair at all.
No, but that's Canada right
Yeah,
now.
that's just Canada in general. And Canada doesn't allow um, generics of the specific medication. There is a generic, but
But
it's
it's not
not
approved.
available in Canada. It's available in Europe. It's available in the United States. It's not available in Canada.
And hey, background, we worked in the insurance industry in the United States.
Yes, and it was covered under the insurance company that we worked with.
And
We worked with itself.
yeah,
So
and they were pretty garbage plans.
yeah, exactly. So they covered it, and that wasn't fair.
So I guess like you tried different types of, like you said, SSRIs, which
Yeah,
I'm
combinations of
currently
medications.
taking an SSRI in addition to cannabis.
Hmm.
Um, so you just found like those didn't help at all, or they made things worse.
Yeah, specifically shout out to Sarah Quill for being a bag of garbage. It is probably the worst thing because, hey, you're not psychotic, but guess what? You're sleeping 21 to 22 hours out of your day while on that medication. And for the 2 hours that you're awake, you don't even know you're alive. So,
Yeah, and
you
this
know,
is, we've talked to like a few people, and like I've read a
yeah.
few stories of like
Oh, a lot of
veterans.
veterans, yes, have been on Seroquel for PTSD
And
and
in
have had
cases
the
where
same
like they
issue.
can't get medical cannabis covered, it's
Hmm.
like, oh, take this like terribly addictive and just nasty medication that like essentially makes you a zombie.
Oh, and just to put it into perspective, when I stopped taking Seroquel, I actually had to go to the hospital and go back on the medication. I tried to stop taking it, and I ended up getting so sick that I had to go to the hospital.
And like you weren't even on a very high
No,
dose
I
yet.
wasn't on a high dose yet either, and they wanted me to go up further on it than where I was.
So like obviously like those are not effective.
No.
I know there's been some overlap in ours trazodone,
Yes. Oh, well, let's
which
not
is
even
like
talk about trazodone.
garbage. If you want to feel like you've been drunk for 4 days
Hmm.
without any of the feeling of being drunk prior.
Without the fun and
Yeah.
stupid decisions.
So if you want that, then like, and it's weird that both of us experienced it different, like kind of at different times, but we experienced kind of the same thing from that. Even my doctor kind of shook his head at trazodone. So if your doctor shakes his head at a medication,
Don't take it.
right? And so I guess that brings us to now. So,
Well, that brings us to 5 years ago.
uh,
5 years ago, as I said before, I was in pain. I decided to try cannabis for pain.
flashback to episode 1 if you want to
Yes,
hear that
episode
story.
1. I kind of go into that a little bit more in detail. Little did I know that cannabis was actually going to stabilize my mood. How did I know this? That it was stabilizing my mood. Less suicide attempts, less depressive episodes, less psychotic episodes, less self-harm in general. My self-harm has depleted to just minuscule amounts. My ability to interact with people and go outside has improved. My paranoia, interacting and getting to know other people has improved. Attention span, overall mood, less manic episodes, less impulsive decisions. And one of the biggest things with BPD is you cannot have healthy relationships. It is impossible to have a healthy relationship while you are suffering from like the main part of BPD. I shouldn't say impossible. It's just very hard to have a healthy relationship, like a healthy one. I mean, like it's very easy to have a relationship, I'm sure, but I mean a healthy one.
Well, yeah.
Where you're not stabbing each other. Um,
Well, right. And
my relationships up before cannabis were tragic. I was a shitty person. Some of them were shitty people, but I was a shitty person. I will emphasis on the fact that I was a shitty person.
oh, hey, join the club.
Right? I can never take away the fact that I was a shitty person, but I can now notice that I know why a lot of it happened and why I had little control over myself. But we have been together now for almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years, like later at the end of the summer.
That is incredible to me.
Well, that's, I mean, obviously, like, that is my longest relationship as well.
Yeah, and we don't stab each other.
No. I mean, like, if I'm being an asshole,
I'll tell you.
You'll tell me I'm being an asshole. I will be like, how am I being an asshole?
Well, let me tell you a thing.
and literally that's, you know, we smoke a joint and then everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, I mean, I've noticed, you know, with for the little bit that we were together, that you weren't using cannabis, like you wouldn't try it. You know, just in that time and from when we had been talking really closely prior to that, you know, there was a like almost night and day difference, kind of in your behavior and just, you know, your demeanor and how you approach things. Like I saw you play games more, like you were more into art, and like that was much more just kind of like, it's not to say it's an end all cure. Like there are still, you know, bad days for both of us. There are still bad moments, but it's definitely, you know, for me looking at it, it's definitely helped you a lot, just like really coping with that.
Yeah, and it really has, with coping with the extremes of emotions. That one especially. I find that, I don't know, I haven't done much research into this, I will admit, that it kind of like cushions certain feelings. So like fear isn't as extreme when I'm like smoking cannabis or like high, basically. I am normally very, very fearful of everything. From dogs to people to bugs to noises.
And again, I guess that comes down to the like feeling everything again.
Yeah, feeling everything too much. And my constant like nervousness. It's very fight or flight. So, you know, it does help a little bit like numb that reaction a little bit.
Yeah, and so, you know, if you have tried cannabis at all and, you know, you're thinking like, hey, I do feel better, but like you're not really sure, you know, if you do think or you feel that you might be suffering from a mental illness or struggling with something, you know, we encourage you obviously to seek help. I know certainly in Newfoundland, that's sometimes not the quickest process.
That's limited, and well, that's not to say it's limited. So there's lots of peer-to-peer help.
Well, that's the big thing, like the community,
like doorways.
And I mean, again, like PTSD buddies, as we mentioned.
Yeah, a lot
like,
of community outreach. That's more of your best bet in Newfoundland. You can easily get referred to a psychiatrist. Like the referral process isn't the problem, it's the waiting. So the wait list is really the
Yeah,
problem.
and that's like evident of like all of our healthcare system, but
Mm-hmm.
mental health, unfortunately, is probably the worst impacted and the most overlooked, I think, in those cases. And so, I mean, for me, I guess like,
Yeah, just explain your struggles with your main
well,
problem.
my
Not all your problems, because I'm right
whoa,
here. You can't explain me.
well, we don't need to go into all my problems. That we don't have that much time or disk space. No one wants to get that part of my brain. So, like, my really official diagnosis is social anxiety disorder. It's often very confused with like early on, and like it usually shows itself very early. Sometimes like 9, 10 years old. I noticed it as early as like fourth or fifth grade. It was to the point where, I always thought at that time I was just overly shy. Like I was a really
Well, that's what everyone
shy,
tells you.
right? It's like, oh, you're just shy. So I'm like, okay, this is what it is. But what's actually going on inside is like, I'm panicking, my heart is racing, I'm sweaty, like lightheaded. As a kid, you obviously don't understand what that is. So I'm just like, oh, this is what it feels like to be shy. That's weird. Well, how does everyone else deal with this? And like not fall apart. And like no one in Newfoundland as a kid says like, hey, that might be an anxiety problem.
Right.
At best, you were getting like, you might have ADD. Here's some Ritalin.
Mm-hmm.
That was about like the solution to every mental health problem in children here for a long
Basically,
time.
yeah.
So, it wasn't something I really even knew existed until I was about 15 or 16. Like a parent of one of my like teenage girlfriends actually had social anxiety. So it was the first I'd ever heard of it, and like his issues that he was describing were, 100% what I was feeling all the time. So like I would of course go out of my way to, and I still do to some degree, to just avoid any situation. Social anxiety is more of like, it's often called like a social phobia, because it's overall like a constant fear of judgment. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in your own mind, logically, you're not that important. Like no one is looking at me and judging me every
Mm-hmm.
second of every day for every move, right? And I know that logically, but anxiety don't give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was something that I struggled with right through my teens. Like it made school very difficult. I didn't have a lot of friends because of it. And it was just like I didn't really want to do that. Like I hung out with my neighborhood like groups because, we saw each other every day. That was a level of comfort. Like my grandma was friends with their parents or grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were forced to interact.
Was it anything like Sandlot?
I don't know.
You've never seen Sandlot?
Shh. I mean, come on.
Go,
I
go,
never saw
go on.
holes until we've been together.
Keep going.
So, yeah, I mean, like, it's not something I even knew of until that time. And this was, oh boy, I don't even want to say that. This was almost 15 years ago. That, like, I actually, so just to put Newfoundland into perspective, I mentioned to my family doctor at the time, not going to mention his name, I don't need to put him on blast, but he actually refused to refer me to like a psychiatrist. Keep in mind, like, I'm a teenager saying, hey, like, I think I need to see a psychiatrist. Like, how many teenagers actually have the, like, and they should,
Right.
like, you shouldn't feel like you can't do that, but it's rare, I think, for someone to come out to a doctor so abruptly and request that.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, it's not the first time I had to actually request that he send me for a procedure that he should have. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
so I did see it, like, this really great psychiatrist. You know what? I will mention her because she was fantastic. I don't know her first name. I don't even know where she practices, if she practices anymore.
Yeah.
But Dr. Madigan, she was a wonderful, wonderful child and youth psychiatrist. Within 2 or 3 sessions where like other counselors and things like that were asking me just really like patronizing questions almost. They're like more interested in like, what kind of TV are you watching? Like, oh, isn't like Saturday Night Live or Jay Leno more for adults? So they were like more worried about me having a more mature sense of humor, I guess, than kind of
They
like the actual reason for me acting out.
Yeah, they just didn't know how to handle you though, because they're used to being like, "Oh, look at the fuzzy bunny," and you were like, "That's not funny."
Well, exactly. Like, I was the kid who
Get
grew
off
up
the
watching.
stage.
Yeah, basically. Funny, I played a shepherd in 2 school plays. And so, like, I saw my psychiatrist. I guess, I don't know what version of the test it was at the time, but they go through, like, the social anxiety disorder. It's basically a checklist of thoughts, feelings, rate it yes, no, 1 to 10. And so eventually it's just basically like, oh, if you have 10 of these, we'll say 20 things, you are probably experiencing some level of social anxiety disorder. By the time I filled out that chart, there were maybe 2 things left there that I hadn't checked off. So, like, it was a very severe case of social anxiety that I do suffer from. I was prescribed a medication, which I now take again. I stopped taking it for many, many years stubbornly.
Hmm.
It was like, oh, I don't need to take medication. And,
You
like,
did.
we're not saying all pharmaceuticals are bad. Like, if you have another medication that works for you, don't stop that without really working with your doctor. Make sure your doctor knows you have medical cannabis, because you may not, if you do, you may not have gone through the same source. I know a lot of doctors here are very still not hip to that.
Yeah.
In the hospital, in like the psychiatry area, there are pamphlets still saying how it's very detrimental to your mental health.
Yeah. We did find one specifically in my appointment office.
Yeah, we have pictures of it, I think, still like on our Instagram somewhere.
Yeah, we have to find that.
Yeah, it's like we were really like sitting there and actually really like disgusted about
Yeah.
it as we're reading through it. So, I'm not gonna go through like my whole manic situation. Like, I covered that quite a bit
With your
with like episode 1, right?
yeah.
That's, hey, how I got to cannabis, but like luckily I did.
Yeah.
So for me, when I say my social anxiety is severe, this. It's like
Hmm.
I hate going to stores.
You hate going on the phone.
Even though I did this professionally
Yeah.
for a better part of 10 years,
Hmm.
and my social anxiety up until 3 months ago, like this would have been no.
Yeah.
There is no way I would have been sitting here and recording a podcast. We wouldn't have done it. Not at all. So, like, cannabis, it does help. It's certainly a very trial an error thing, because not every strain, not every dose, everything
Yeah.
is going to work for someone. So since we have been so limited on like research being able to be done, it still is like an art form to find your treatment.
And it comes down to your own research as well. Look into different terpenes, different
Yes,
strains.
terpenes.
Terpenes are
More
major.
more than anything, I think, for medically, and like, indica, sativa, but terpenes are where you're going to start finding, I think, the big part of the medical benefits. Like, yourself.
Yeah, myself, linalool actually is very calming and can bring me out of panic attacks.
And so for you, like, sativas generally.
Oh yeah, and sativas keep me wide awake. I like the feeling of my brain being alert. I find if I have indicas, or mycerine specifically, the very like clovey taste, earthy clovey taste.
It's almost like a spicy, earthy.
Yeah, well, they explain it. It actually is a terpene in cloves as well.
Okay.
So that one actually causes me to have severe panic attacks because I feel like my body's locked, but my brain is going a million miles an hour. So indica is not for me at all.
And that's where we completely split. Like, I find for me, I am certain at this point my social anxiety has evolved into like other anxiety disorders. That's something it is known to do over time. So a lot of people end up suffering from, or more likely to suffer from, things like depression. And I think in my case, like, I would lean towards, probably while I haven't been diagnosed, research certainly leads me towards like bipolar to some degree, just because of how that emotion can switch so quickly for me, or like those previous manic stages I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like, that comes with increased or like decreased appetite. There's no secret, cannabis helps increase your appetite.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping,
Yeah.
like if you have a very like strong indica or a very nice indica, like that's,
Or in my case, a good hybrid.
or a good hybrid. Yeah, don't just put yourself in a panic attack to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's not a good time
That's
to have a panic attack.
That's counterproductive.
That's the reason why I can't sleep anyways.
Right. And so it's really, it's something I wish that like a doctor would have suggested for me medically very long ago to even try. Like, it probably would have saved me so much grief at jobs, or like, just social interactions in general.
Oh, but they had all the reefer madness.
Well, of course, it's the devil's lettuce. It's everything. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put up some links, I guess, to try to, like, funny enough, Wikipedia has better definitions of these illnesses than like the Canadian Mental Health Association,
which is so sad.
And yeah, so if you are interested in doing a little more research, like, if anything we described is, it sounds similar to something you've experienced, definitely do some research. We wouldn't say self-diagnose yourself, but like, if you can get a general understanding of why you might be feeling a certain way, that's a good first step.
Mm-hmm. And if you have some information, like, write a journal down. Like, if you see that from what we were speaking of, that you might have social anxiety, keep a journal of situations of where you feel like you're having
what your triggers are, like,
the
most.
And when you're reacting the most, and what's causing, like, if do loud noises affect you, do like certain genders affect you, things like that, and bring that to a doctor or psychiatrist, and they can help you from there, because they will have to sit there for appointment after appointment to learn all these things about you. If you already have a journal when you go into a psychiatrist, that helps them so much, because you've already done the research that they want you to do.
Yeah, so I mean, that could put you 2 or 3 sessions
ahead.
And if
you're somebody
right?
with limited therapist sessions, Like I used to only get 5 a year.
Well, that's it. So, like, I mean, psychiatrists are covered.
Well, covered, but with a
Few
therapist,
and far between.
yes.
So therapy, like that's therapists, that's out of pocket. Unless you have a very good insurance plan that covers it. Most places that have insurance I've seen have like an employee support program that will cover a number of them. And I will say, for the worst job I've ever had, I had the best insurance package there. I won't say the employer, I'm not going to say the insurance package, but like, thankfully, the most mentally taxing job that I think either of us had.
Yep.
Hey, it was a call center. We're not going to say where.
Or which one specifically.
If you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, that's if I knew medical cannabis was like going to be a very beneficial thing in that situation, and like we did use cannabis then, but it wasn't like, we weren't as serious about the medical side of it. Like, we knew
it was like a smoke before supper, that's it.
Yeah, it was like, all right, like, we have all our anxiety throughout the day because we're working like 8 hours, 10 hours a day, but then at night it was like, the mind is rested, let's eat, watch TV, play games. And it was just like, it was used to unwind. As we've started understanding terpenes and strains and getting more into that, and, you know, working with really better medical professionals too, it's really helping us get a better understanding of medical cannabis as a whole and how it helps us. And really, if we can share that information or experience, it's kind of, you know, what we want to do. And, you know, so if you want to do more research on that, you know, you can read up on these or like other, like, cannabis as it helps medically.
Look into terpenes, like we said. Look into different strains. Some people do suggest Harlequin for anxiety.
Which is,
that actually has CBD and THC. Always remember, THC is psychoactive, CBD is psychotropic.
and there are some studies coming out right now that say that it is better to have like a
little
small
bit of
level of
THC
THC
to
with the
activate.
CBD,
Yeah.
rather than just using one specific.
All right. And we also, just today, to end on a lighter note,
Oh yeah,
we want to let everybody know
we have a, would you say, sponsorship, partnership,
an agreement.
an agreement
with
so
Foggy Seed Company. And that is actually a Newfoundland local. If you are someone who lives in the St. John's area and you want beans ASAP,
oh wait, can I do this part?
oh, you can do this part if you want.
Okay, well, sir or ma'am, do you hate Canada Post? We do. Do you live in St. John's or surrounding area? We do. Do you have a community mailbox? We do. Do you want to walk to your community mailbox, probably at the bottom of a hill, to get your seeds, maybe?
Hell no.
Do you live on Leslie Street? Fuck no, you don't want to walk down or up that hill. So, the Foggy Seed Company, you don't fucking need to worry about it. If you live in either of the surrounding areas, $10.
2 fins.
2 fins, $10, they'll bring that shit to your door. So you get fire genetics delivered straight to the door. No bullshit.
Which is great, because if you want to just start growing that, like, that day or the day after, like, depending on when they have time.
Well, hey,
it's
like,
right away. You don't have to wait like 11 to 12 days.
You know, if you're like us, you might be kind of impulsive and think, shit, we want to grow something tomorrow.
Yeah, let's start like 6 seeds randomly
and
tomorrow.
Now I'm not going to say that they can definitely deliver it in one day.
Yeah.
I'm not making any false promises.
No.
But within a short period of time, they can get you your beads. if you're local. If not, they do ship Canada-wide.
Yeah.
So, we are going to be running a contest. What the prize is going to be will be $50 of store credit for the Foggy Seed Company. They've been so generous as to provide us with that option to do a giveaway. So we're not going to go into like a whole lot of detail about the giveaway itself here.
Yeah, we're going to post it up on Instagram.
On our Instagram.
And on our Facebook.
So we'll have more details about it there. We know, not everyone is going to use one platform, so we want to try to make it kind of platform agnostic. So we're going to put out some details about it that really does make it very open to both platforms, and a way for us to get the information out there. We'll have information on like how long it's going to be running, what you need to do. It is, guys, open to Canadian residents only. We'd love to expand in the future to maybe cover something we can do internationally. But right now, obvious reasons,
Risky business.
It's something that would need to stay within Canada. If you are interested in purchasing from the Foggy Seed Company, it's the foggyseedcompany.ca. You can go on their website, list all the partners they work with, all the awesome stuff they have. We've already got one picked out on our list that we want, that we'll be getting soon. And yeah, so I mean, you can go there, check it out. And if you see anything you like, follow our social channels, and maybe you can win some money towards them.
Yeah. And some of the seeds on there, like ones that we want, are within that range of the $50.
Yeah, so it's not to say like, hey, you're not going to get anything for that amount. Like, you will be able to get things on there for that, or if you add a little bit with it, if there's something else you see, like it's $50 towards seeds, man.
Yeah, that's $50 you didn't have towards seeds.
So like, fuck it, you always want more seeds. So seriously, check that out. That's great. I'm sure there's going to be more news to come if everyone's receptive. I guess we'll go into just the kind of like social media stuff at this point. So I'm gonna look up some information. You can do the general social media role.
All right, so if you want to follow our grow, you can go to Instagram at Team Sour NL.
Team.Sour.
Oh, Team.SourNL.
Yeah, it's still like, if you followed us under Sour Weasel Cannabis, you're good.
Yeah.
Same account, different name.
Yeah, different name. We just kind of rebranded a bit. If you want to follow Brad, you can follow him at Arkham.Smoke.
That's also on Instagram.
Yeah, and for myself, it would be Moon.Grown. Also, you can follow the NL Cannabis Podcast
at NL Cannabis Podcast on Instagram.
And NL Cannabis Pod
on Twitter.
Yeah, because Twitter's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't like it, but necessary evil for shameless self-promotion. And so, if you do want to see a little bit more as well of what the Foggy Seed Company has to offer, you can find them on Instagram also, at the Foggy Seed Company. You can also find them on Facebook as well if you search like the same thing. If you go to our Facebook page, we'll have a post there. Of course, we already have.
We'll have links shared as well.
So yeah, like, go support them. If you are in Newfoundland, then you've supported something local.
And that's what this is all about. We want to help everyone local.
Well, that's it. Like, it's the Newfoundland Cannabis Podcast. We want to be able to like cover topics for everyone, but at the end of the day, like, we really want to be supportive of the community here as a whole. And I mean, do you have anything else to add? I think we already ran longer than we
Yeah, longer than we wanted to.
longer than we were intending to.
Yeah, but I think we basically covered everything. It was a little bit of a negative episode, but I'm glad we ended with a bit of positivity, and hopefully everyone out there can take some positivity from this episode. Realize that there is help out there, whether it be peer-to-peer, family member, someone you're in relationship with. Feel free to reach out to anyone. Don't ever feel like you need to hide your feelings, your emotions, your problems, because not always can you fix them yourself. You sometimes need help of others.
And I couldn't say anything better than that. Like, we've had this discussion with each other many times. Like, that, you know, that's part of it, being able to support each other at our worst.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Sickness
that's
and
it.
health.
Like, you know, there is help out there, especially in Newfoundland. Like, if you have, like, there are community groups out there that are doing great things.
All right, thanks for listening in, guys, and take care.
And we will be back next week. We do have, like, a little project we're working on, so there may be some new, kind of more freeform content that we're pushing through. A little less scripted, so we're gonna have more news about that really soon as well. Very soon as well.
Very soon.
All right. I'm shit at ending podcasts, so
All right, peace out.
fucking save the Yeti.
Save the Yeti.
Yeah, since I was 18, worked for different heartless corporations for the last 12 years. I felt like I worked for Satan, selling television and internet in a nation where cellular is a need, and everybody is waiting for the next iPhone. Made by indentured agents and sells for $1,000 a month. Does it cost to make them on top of your monthly fee? Think of how much you're paying for a service that costs fractions of what those companies taking. They're making profits up in the tens of the billions. I make $30,000 a year and barely can make a living. Plus they make me work on Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. Yeah, they pay me double time cause they have to. What if they didn't? It's the same for most jobs. Not many, a different slave labor on top of wage labor to make a killing. Kids make it in a factory, I sell it in a store. Then I buy it for myself cause I'm just another whore. Your productivity leads to profitability. Your productivity leads to profitability. They make it in a factory, I sell it in a store. Then I buy one for myself cause I'm just another whore. Your productivity leads to profitability. Your productivity leads to profitability. They make it in a factory, I sell it in a store. Then I buy one for myself cause I'm just another whore. Your productivity leads to profitability, so somebody else can get rich off of all your abilities. And that's the American dream if you think it all differently. You're a heretic and terrorist against the divinity of capitalism. Such a savage religion relies on acts of attrition, leaves you trapped in a system where people sell their souls for the goals that they're after. The millions are free to do whatever you please while you trapped in a prison. The materialism, the material vision of imperialism was hidden by satirical sit-ins. Politicians serve the profits of winnings. All their super PAC supporters, how they got the position. Damn, we all encouraged to be apathetic. Here's something and half forget it. Hour and a half a second. You sell your soul a discount to buy it back again in time with interest. It seems as though the cycle has no ending. Your productivity leads to profitability. Your productivity leads to profitability. They make it in a factory, I sell it in a store. Then I buy one for myself cause I'm just another whore. Your productivity leads to profitability. Your productivity leads to profitability. They make it in a factory, I sell it in a store. Then I buy one for myself cause I'm just another whore.